Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and deeply personal 45-year investigation into the root causes of multiple sclerosis. Our guide for this journey is Dr. Bruce Kaplan. He's a former dentist and chiropractor who's actually been living with MS himself for over 4 decades. Drawing from his own intense self-observation and medical background, Dr. Kaplan developed what he calls the perfect storm theory. Basically, he argues that chronic illnesses like MS, they don't just happen out of nowhere. They're triggered by a very specific convergence of hidden stressors. And the way he breaks this down is incredibly visual and structured. Now, to really understand this theory, we've got to travel back to 1981. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. Imagine being a junior in a highly demanding dental school in St. Louis. Your reality is completely visceral and chaotic. You're sharing an apartment with a virtual stranger. You're trying to survive the dead of winter with a broken water heater, meaning literally no hot water for weeks. Someone steals every single piece of clothing you own from the communal laundry. You are profoundly lonely, trying to build a new life from scratch, all while buckling under just immense academic pressure. Well, it was right there, right in the middle of this exact chaotic storm, that his very first MS symptoms appeared. Okay, let's dive into this. Anatomy of a perfect storm. How a cascade of stressors triggered MS. Emotional and invisible stressors. The unseen weight of trauma and exhaustion. So the foundation of Kaplan's illness, according to his own assessment, wasn't actually a physical pathogen at first. It was invisible emotional weight. Beyond the stolen laundry and freezing showers, his whole foundation was cracking. He had left the comfort of his parents' home for the very first time. Between his first and second year of dental school, at just 23 years old, he entered into a marriage he inherently knew he wasn't ready for, but he just lacked the life experience to back out. He was carrying this massive emotional burden while trying to survive one of the most rigorous academic programs imaginable. Oh, and he was battling undiagnosed ADD. In 1981, this wasn't exactly something people accommodated. He struggled to stay awake in lectures. Note-taking was an absolute battle. He was working twice as hard as his peers just to maintain the exact same level. The physical toll of this hidden struggle was severe. His body actually began signaling distress in the only language it had. He developed a stress-induced itch so intense that he would literally scratch his skin until it bled. His nervous system was just completely exhausted and dysregulated. Viral and toxic burdens, Epstein-Barr, diet, and Mercury. Now, while his emotional foundation was cracking, physiological loads were accumulating simultaneously right behind the scenes. Lab tests later revealed exceptionally high titers for the Epstein-Barr virus. This meant his immune system had been mounting a massive, ongoing response. Combine this underlying viral fight with the typical convenience store diet and intense sugar addiction of a stressed dental student, and you get an immune system that is completely nutritionally depleted. But there was another toxic burden lurking. Kaplan grew up with a mouthful of silver amalgam fillings in virtually every single back tooth. And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. Dental amalgam isn't just silver, it's approximately 50% mercury. Now, while the official stance of the dental establishment is that this mercury is safely bound and not released, Kaplan points to a growing body of scientific evidence suggesting that mercury is actually released every single time a person chews. And his exposure didn't start in the dentist's chair either. Kaplan shares this genuinely chilling childhood anecdote. He vividly remembers playing with liquid mercury from a broken thermometer, rolling the fascinating silver metal back and forth between his fingers on a table. As a child, absolutely nobody warned him that elemental mercury could be absorbed directly through the skin. This innocent play added to a heavy, completely unrecognized toxic burden. Testing later in life revealed a staggering number. His mercury levels were literally off the charts. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin, and while it might clear from general body tissues relatively quickly, research indicates that the estimated half-life of mercury specifically in the human brain is 20 to 27 years. Let that sink in for a second. This really drives home Kaplan's critical point. This neurotoxin doesn't just pass through you, it accumulates over a lifetime. His toxic burden was likely building from childhood, perhaps even in utero. The galvanic current trigger, the final drop that breaks the system. Okay, so with an exhausted nervous system, high viral loads, poor nutrition, and decades of accumulating mercury, the stage was totally set. So what was the match that lit the powder keg? During that exact same year his MS symptoms appeared, Kaplan had 2 of his amalgam fillings replaced with gold crowns. What he didn't know back then is a concept called a galvanic current. When you place two dissimilar metals in the mouth, like gold right next to silver amalgam, it creates a literal battery. It generates a small but continuous electrical charge right there in the oral cavity. So why does that electrical charge actually matter? Well, according to the research Kaplan cites, this galvanic current accelerates the release of mercury from the remaining amalgam fillings at approximately 10 times the normal rate. 10 times! For Kaplan, this massive sudden influx of a neurotoxin was the final blow to an already struggling system. So the crucial point is, the overflowing bucket theory, when the body can no longer compensate. Kaplan synthesizes all these seemingly separate factors into a brilliant core medical metaphor. The body is exactly like a bucket. For most people, their bucket never fills completely. Their body compensates, their toxic load stays manageable, and they never experience any symptoms. But look at how Kaplan's bucket was filling up. Step 1, pouring in the massive emotional stress of a new city, an unready marriage, and the hidden exhaustion of undiagnosed ADD. Step 2, adding the heavy immunological load of the Epstein-Barr virus mixed with sugar addiction and poor nutrition. Step 3, the steady, decades-long drip of accumulating mercury in the brain tissues. And finally, step 4, that galvanic current trigger. The simultaneous convergence of these specific factors caused his system to breach its threshold. The bucket overflowed. And that overflow, Kaplan argues, is the precise moment autoimmune disease symptoms actually begin. To really validate this connection between the emotional and the physical, Kaplan points to the landmark research of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score. Van der Kolk's research demonstrates that psychological and emotional trauma doesn't just leave emotional scars, it actually physically and biologically reshapes the body and the brain. The loneliness, the difficult marriage, the academic failure, his body was registering absolutely all of it. The emotional storm and the biological storm weren't separate events at all. They were one singular physiological event. Which brings us to autonomic dysregulation. Traumatic stress produces a lasting imbalance in the autonomic nervous system. And this dysregulation is directly scientifically linked to autoimmune disorders like MS. It really grounds Kaplan's assertion. Emotional burdens physically compromise the immune system, eventually causing the body to turn against itself. What is your root cause? Looking beyond the standard medical model. Kaplan makes it very clear that while his specific storm was made of mercury, dental school stress, and EBV, everyone's storm looks a bit different. The real problem, he argues, is that the standard medical model rarely looks for these underlying converging root causes. Traditional medicine is incredibly adept at finding the lesions, right? But it rarely asks about the invisible stressors filling up the bucket. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question from Dr. Kaplan. Whether you're managing an autoimmune condition yourself or simply thinking about your overall health, ask yourself, what was happening in your life 1 to 2 years before your body started signaling distress? What elements are quietly filling your metaphorical bucket? Understanding your own perfect storm might just be the absolute most important step in finding your way out of it. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.